Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Tiger Talk, brought to you by KLSU News. I'm Kierra Evans, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Report for America Corps member Alex Cox.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. How was your day today?
It was supposed to be a nice, easy stay in the newsroom and write kind of day, but then the Capitol Access reporter was like, "Hey, can you cover this for me?" And so I turned two things, and my silent, nice, easy day turned into a long, full day of reporting. But that's the job, right?
Right, that is the job. It's something that we can all relate to.
Uh,
But as of November 1st, early voting is in full swing. And if you haven't heard, a new plan is on the ballot awaiting your answer. With that being said, today we are going to discuss the details of Thrive. So, Alex, could you briefly go over what Thrive entails?
So the Thrive in the first place is going to be a little confusing for your listeners because Thrive is not going to appear anywhere on the ballot. It's the marketing term used by the parish officials. So what you're going to see is Prop 1, 2, and 3. Each of those is for a millage renewal, millage property tax. And 1 mil is about $1,000 of property evaluation. It's a whole bunch of nonsense. Just know it's property tax, and you'll see estimates on the ballot. And so each of these three propositions is refunding a millage for three different organizations: the library, the mosquito abatement, and the Baton Rouge Council on Aging. And you'll see on the ballot that the library is going to have the largest millage and is kind of the center of all of this because this is the only time the library can get its millage re-upped before it is without property tax. So it's without that very, very much needed revenue stream.
Okay, and during the original press release back in May, said Edwards committee told us that a portion of taxes from the East Baton Rouge Library, mosquito abatement, and rodent control would be put into a general fund. Is this still the case?
Yeah, that's more or less the case. And so a portion that was a good catch because I forgot because essentially some of the money used in the operating fund, that's just how they pay for things day to day, is going to be rededicated. So that's about 50 million from the library, and they don't like calling it a surplus, but I think it's really, really simple to think that's kind of the money they can give up and like still operate day to day. They'd rather have it, and surplus is not the best way to describe it, but I think that's a quick way for your listeners to understand that. And then same thing with the mosquito abatement. Both of those, actually, the one-time payments, they're not actually going to the general fund. That's they're going to pay down debt, which is going to then go to the general fund. So there's an extra step in there, and that extra step is kind of important to mention because it's part of the mayor president's larger plan and kind of larger ethos that he ran on. And then also, that doesn't mean that the city parish is without debt. There are still some debt sources. I was talking to Mason Batts with the city parish, and he said that there are some places where the money is kind of dedicated and a bunch of bureaucratic nonsense to just say not everything's getting paid off.
Okay, and in a state like Louisiana, I know things like education, rodent control, mosquito abatement are very important. So, with less money going to these essential resources, how will that kind of affect us?
So actually, the thing about this is mosquito abatement and council aging, they don't really care. This is completely fine because if you look at the ballot language, point 5 and point 2.3, I believe, of the mosquito abatement and the council on aging respectively are going to the city parish. And essentially the reason they're completely fine giving that up is because they're already not receiving that. So they have a millage rate of 1 mil. Remember, a mil is 1 equals $1,000 of property tax evaluation. And so the mosquito abatement, they're taking half a mil right now. They rolled back. And so they're not going to see any kind of difference. And just the way millages work is you need to re-up at the max you ever will want to take. It's also important to note the mosquito abatement. This is not their main millage. This is an emergency fund. So all of this like large nuance and nonsense to say the Council on Aging and the mosquito abatement, they're going to be fine. If this passes, you're not going to see a cut in service. The library, on the other hand, that's where you will see a little bit of a cut in service. And so I want to remind everyone that the library is behind this plan. And, they call it a compromise because at the end of the day, it is, but they are behind this plan. But they will be cutting some services. And so what that's going to look like is they're going to go through their databases of academic and language apps and those kind of things. And the ones that they don't see used because they collect that data, they're going to cut them because it's already not being used. And they're also I don't know, hip books. I don't know, popular books, but insert popular book here.
Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah,
The Giver.
New ones is what I'm saying.
Oh.
A brand new
Colleen
release.
Hoover.
Yeah, there we go. The new Colleen Hoover release, they will buy 5 instead of 7. Okay. That's not an exact number, but it's just one of those things where they're going to buy less. They're going to find ways to cut in where the public is not really going to see it. They're going to feel it, but the public, might not. So at the end of the day, if this passes, the public is probably not going to see a lot. The actual other side of the coin, if this doesn't pass, the public is going to see the effects in very obvious ways because if this doesn't pass, the city parish is at about a 21. Am I jumping ahead on a question?
Not at all.
Okay. So the city parish is about at a $21 million budget deficit. And so essentially what the mayor president has decided to do to fill that gap if Thrive doesn't pass is a 12% cut around the board except for the police department. And the police department has that exception because they are extraordinarily understaffed. They are we've heard at council many times from the chief just how understaffed he is. And so those 12% cuts, that's just going to hit some departments hard. I heard from, again, Mason Batts with the city that you're going to see it in public works because it has a huge budget. So 12% is more money. And so you will see some of your services cut, and especially the library, again, going back to them, if this doesn't pass, they don't have their millage. They don't have the thing that really funds them. And so, as I said earlier, I kind of characterized it as the extra money they have, that $52 million. Well, they're going to spend that, and then what are they going to have? And they're going to have to find a way to keep going as long as possible. So that's going to look like reduced hours. That's going to look like potential staff cuts. That's if Prop 1 doesn't pass, the library is going to be in a very difficult position. So a yes vote means kind of some cuts and cuts at the library and a little bit off the top, and nothing at the Council on Aging mosquito abatement. And a no vote means the library is going to be in a very difficult position. The city parish is going to be in a very difficult position. And actually, the Council on Aging mosquito abatement have another year to do their millage again. So they're honestly fine either way. But that will become a problem if they don't get their funding next year. But thinking about the right now, that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, awesome. And just for context reasons,
Yeah.
going back to the original press release, Sid Edwards' team said that this rededication would pay down more than $52 million in debt.
Mm-hmm.
So how did Baton Rouge find itself in such big amounts of debt?
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily going to speak extremely authoritatively on that. I am 5 months on the job, and so right now my reporting has been kind of triaging what is kind of important, and so looking at the now, not instead of kind of looking back. But I do want to remind people that cities and municipal bodies take on debt all the time. I mean, think about bonds and think about ways to fund projects. So debt is not necessarily always this dangerous, scary thing. It is just kind of part of how some government bodies function. I mean, the East Baton Rouge school system just issued a bond that will put them in some debt, but they had just finished paying off their previous bond. So it's just kind of part of, I have knocked my mic so bad. It is part of city government function, but the specifics I'm not necessarily up to date on.
Okay, well, thank you for
Mhm.
answering the question for me. But with debt in mind, will any of this rededicated tax money go towards Landry's new SNAP benefit plan, or is that completely
No,
unrelated?
that's a completely. Those are two different entities.
Okay,
So
completely unrelated.
yeah, completely
I know
unrelated.
that
You're
was a
thinking,
concern.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're thinking about state and a state government versus a local government. The state government is, just to give your listeners context, the state government is going to use Department of Health dollars first, and then if it is needed, they're going to tap into what is essentially a rainy day fund.
Okay.
And so, but the city parish, that's not.
It will not affect that at all.
No. That's just completely two different lanes of government.
Okay, good, because I know that was a concern that I had seen.
Mhm.
But back to locally,
Mhm.
with this reduction of debt, what changes could we see within Baton Rouge economy in the next 5 years?
Oh, interesting. I don't. So here's the thing. I don't necessarily know if this is going to be kind of the economic swing that you're necessarily characterizing it. Like there are economic projects going on. I'm forgetting the specific name of all of the agencies, but there are major economic like reshaping, redevelopment plans kind of going in. I know there was a meeting where they're planning like where they threw around the idea of turning kind of the whole riverfront into a park space, into a green space for people to have. So there are those plans going on, but that's not Thrive.
Yes.
Thrive is strictly about the city government's ability to function. We are in the parish is in a kind of a difficult spot. It has lost multiple revenue funds because the annexation of City George, by the very definition of annexation, the tax money has been diverted to where it belongs in St. George. And then also American Rescue Plan Act funds that's a COVID era thing, are starting to dry out. And that's what our entire stormwater drainage system is kind of funded on, is those dollars. So essentially, this is kind of a confluence of very, very multiple factors. And I mean, you saw with the last administration, the last budget that was passed, that had somewhere in the ballpark of, I want to say, $40 million in cuts, I'm pretty sure. So at the end of this is going to be the Baton Rouge government has cut a lot and tried to kind of readjust, but we're kind of in just a readjustment period with kind of the nature of the post-COVID world and the annexation of the city of St. George. And also there's a new administration who they're Republicans, and Republicans prioritize government efficiency. So even if this does pass, we're not going to see no cuts if this does pass, because because this Edwards administration is looking for ways to trim the fat, and they are, again, they are Republicans. The Republican policy is kind of efficient government, smaller government. So we'll kind of see that. But in terms of overall effects on the Baton Rouge economy, I would look for Plan Baton Rouge 3.
Okay.
That is a different thing that is going on. I believe that's BRAF, the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. That's more where you'll see economic changes. This is more in the weeds, keeping the city functioning day to day, essentially keeping the lights on, because you can't necessarily have all of these major swings if you don't have the basics, and that's where we are right now.
I see. And now there was an original proposal that Mayor Sid
Oh,
Edwards
yes.
put out that voters did not like. So how is this different?
So, in my interview, again, going back to my interview with Mason Batts, I characterized it as disastrous, and he agreed. Because, I mean, it was. And I think just to squarely address your question, completely different plan. When I was talking with Mason, he essentially said that the reason that plan happened is the mayor's office was looking for ways to fix all of the problems we just discussed, the St. George, the ARPA funding, all of that sort of thing. They were looking at this budget deficit and looking for areas to find money, and they were looking at the library's millage. The library proposed their millage renewal, and so the mayor's office had to come up with something, is what I was told. And so, yeah, the community did not like that. They came out in force because the local library is absolutely loved. And so, I do think that's a challenge for the Thrive initiative right now is, when I have looked on different social media platforms, Reddit, Facebook, that sort of thing, and just talked to people in the community, what I've really heard is the opposition to this are really big fans of the library. And they remember this first proposal, and they want all of their tax dollars, all of their 11.1 mils, to go to the library. That's just not this. That's just not the option right now. A no vote doesn't do that. A no vote has no tax money to the library. A yes vote gets some tax money to the library. And so that's kind of where the shadow of this initial proposal comes in, is people really would like to vote on the idea of Thrive directly and be able to say, yes, I want to do Thrive, or no, I want to do how we've always done it. And that's not what is going to be on the ballot. It's, yes, I want to do Thrive and fund the library. No, I don't want to do Thrive, and I don't want to fund the library. And so you don't necessarily have the option to say no to Thrive and say yes to the library.
I see. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm sure that was really difficult for viewers to comprehend.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where in politics, if someone makes kind of a move, the shadow of that move hangs, even if times change. And
Yes.
so I think that is going to definitely be one of the biggest struggles the initiative sees. And from what I've heard from the community, that is certainly kind of a common misconception, is this plan is still that older plan, when it's completely not true.
Well, Alex, I have one more question for you.
Go for it.
So why should young voters like LSU students like myself care about Thrive, and how will this affect us?
Well, first things first, I want to remind you and your listeners that you have a very powerful voter bloc here. I mean, think about the population on campus, and think about the ability. I know not everyone is registered to vote in the area, and I know that not as everyone necessarily wants to be registered to vote in the area. But even if we looked at the subsection of people who are either from here or are getting their citizenship or whatever their logistical things to make them eligible, if they all voted, you guys would have a pretty outsized say on things. And so just generally, I think it is important to remember that voting gives you power, and you are essentially leaving that power on the table if you don't vote. So I just want to start there. But to address the part about how Thrive affects you generally, like I said earlier, what you're really going to see is public works is going to kind of falter if this vote gets voted down. And I mean, also, this is also generally the local city government impacts you quite a bit. They have kind of final say on things. And so just generally being involved in what they do is extraordinarily important, even if you're just here for 4 years. And so there's that. And trying to think of any other ways y'all are affected, because, you're not going to necessarily, I doubt many of your listeners or any of your listeners are property tax payers here. I would be genuinely, I mean, that could.
Possibly. We have a pretty large listening of our older genre of people that listen to KLSU. Shout out to you guys.
Shout out to you. If you own a house and listen to KLSU, email your news director. This is not making it in. I know it.
Oh, no. It will make it in.
Oh, heck yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you do own property, this is a property tax, and millages go on the ballot. These kind of millages, I should say, go on the ballot every 10 years for you to evaluate if you want to continue to have this property tax. And then also a reminder that millages get re-upped at the maximum possible thing they could ever want. So you might be accustomed to a rollback right now, which is a less taxes, and they are essentially asking to roll forward and charge us a little bit more. I did the math; it's about $5-6 a month in property tax, if I understand the complexities of property tax correctly. And so, yeah, there's that for your older listeners out there. Shout out to you. Shout out to you. I think that's kind of the takeaway from having a municipal reporter on this show is, especially for your younger audience, you don't necessarily see all of the municipality functions that happen in your day-to-day life, but a lot of your day-to-day life is impacted by municipal functions. And so that being funded is extremely important to you, and you should be paying attention on how you want that funded, if you want that funded, and then also just using your power through a vote.
Thank you so much, Alex. Your insight is greatly appreciated. And as for voters, head to the polls November 15th and vote either yes or no on the Thrive Plan. And always remember, the future is in your hands. But right now, it's at the ballot.